Notice of a public meeting of the Charter Review Committee of the City of Brownsville. The Charter Review Committee of the City of Brownsville will conduct a regular meeting on Thursday, November 3rd, 2022 at 5 p.m. in the City Commission chambers of the Brownsville City Hall. Members of the public who submitted a public comment form will be permitted to offer public comments as provided by the agenda and as permitted by the presiding officer during the meeting. It is now 5:03. I would start with roll call. Carlos Cascos, Gerardo Martinez, Daisy Zamora,
Present.
Michael Gonzalez, Evaristo Cárdenas, Tomás Tijerina, and David Merrill. Mr. Flores?
Yes, we require oath of office under our city ordinances of all officers. So if everybody present and in virtually will stand and swear to the following. I'll recite it. I'll leave a blank for your name. Everybody can recite their name at the same time. And then we'll get these two, as the oath of office and a statement of appointed officer. So if everybody will repeat with me, I state your name.
I, Daisy Zamora,
Yes, let's do this again. Sorry about that. I'm sidetracked. I state your name. You solemnly affirm
do solemnly affirm
that I will faithfully execute
that I will faithfully execute
the duties as a member
the duties as a member
of the Charter Review Committee of the City of Brownsville,
of the Charter Review Committee of the City of Brownsville,
Cameron County, State of Texas,
Cameron County, State of Texas,
and will to the best of my ability
and will to the best of my ability
preserve, protect, and defend
preserve, protect, and defend
the Constitution and laws
the Constitution and laws
of the United States and of this state.
of the United States and of this state.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Now for the statement of appointed officer. I state your name.
I, Daisy Zamora,
Do solemnly affirm
do solemnly affirm
that I have not directly or indirectly
that I have not directly or indirectly
paid, offered, or promised
aid, offered, or promised
to pay, contributed, or promised to contribute any money
to contribute any money
or anything of value
or anything of value
or promise any public office
or promise any public office
or employment
nor employment
as a reward to secure my appointment
as a reward to secure my appointment
or confirmation thereof.
or confirmation thereof.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Thank you. Go ahead, Julie. Yes, just after.
Next item, we have invocation.
If anybody would like to state an invocation, if not, I can do the honors. Father God, we thank you for this time. We get to gather as a unit, as a group, to assist the city in this endeavor in the Charter Review Committee. We ask you to give us guidance in our endeavors and clarity. And we pray, amen. And then, go ahead.
Next item, we have the Pledge of Allegiance. If we please stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. Texas flag. One indivisible. At this point, before public comment, Mr. Merrill would like to make an announcement. Go ahead, Mr. Merrill, and I can take any questions.
First of all, I'm delighted to have been invited to serve on this committee, and I'm delighted to be able to work with you. But as I said to the commissioner when he asked if I would serve, I have a regulatory and policy process that I have to go through before I can be of any real service. So I look forward to being able to serve because I expect that process to be completed certainly by this time next week. But since I haven't completed it, I really shouldn't serve or swear that I will serve. I'd like, if with your permission, I will stay and listen and answer questions if it comes to me, but I can't officially sit up there. If y'all don't object to that, that's what I'd like to do. If you do object to it, I don't blame you. Go ahead. Okay. Thank you very much.
Next item, we have public comment. We did not receive any public comments. Next item, we have appointments, consideration and action to appoint a chair and vice chair.
Gentlemen and Ms. Zamora, thank you for attending. The first action item will be to appoint a chair and a vice chair. This doesn't require a second, but does require a majority vote of those present. If anybody would like to make any nominations? Oh, yes, and if you guys could press on your mics, a red light should light up if it's on. There you go.
Okay.
So if there's a motion, we just need a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, sir, would you like to take your position as chair?
For the city.
Sorry, I did not hear the
Nominate
motion.
himself. Yes.
I'm sorry?
I
He
did not hear
nominated
the
himself.
motion.
There was a motion to nominate, I'm sorry, I'm getting familiar with names.
Yeah, because we didn't hear the,
Mr. Cardenas, Mr. Cardenas was nominated as chair and there was a second, there was a vote, and a call for that.
he's Mr. Cardenas.
Mr. Cardenas. Yes. There's also the position of vice chair. Are there any nominations from the board for vice chair? There's a nomination from Mr. Gonzalez. Are there any other nominations or a second for that?
I'll have a second for Michael.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Mr. Gonzalez, congratulations. We have a chair and vice chair. With that, we'll go ahead and proceed into our work session. A work session just slated from our city attorney's office to kind of introduce ourselves and also just give some of the background of how we came to this meeting today. And briefly, you should have on your desks, on your podium, and Ms. Zamora will provide these materials if you don't have them with you via email. But we do have just a short kind of introduction to our legal team. Here we have Mr. Trevino, who's our deputy city attorney. And many of you know Ms. Jennifer Avendano. She's our assistant city attorney and chief prosecutor. But she also guided this committee 2 years ago through a similar charter review process. We did list a short bio of each one of us, but most importantly for each and every one of you, our contact information. So you should have that sheet in front of you. And if you have any questions or any requests at any time through this process, please send us an email to any or all of us, or give us a call. Those are our work cell phone numbers, so you can get a hold of us there by text or email.
Thank you.
Next slide, please. So just a brief outline of our meeting. We're going to go over just a presentation by our city attorney's office. Ms. Avendano will just briefly go over the governing of home rule charter amendments. I'll do a short introduction into drafting charter amendments and other recommendations from our office. And Mr. Trevino will go into a summary of the resolution adopted by the City Commission and a proposed timeline. As you see in your agenda, we will also be approving future meeting dates, possibly future agenda items, and approving CRC rules and procedures. We do have a good amount of time for that today, so we just welcome everybody's input and encourage any kind of recommendations. We're here to serve you guys, but for this first meeting, just kind of presenting a good foundation to launch from. Next slide, please. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Avendaño.
Good evening, committee members. As you all recall from a couple, well, not all, but some of you recall from a couple of years ago, I gave a brief presentation when we first started the Charter Review Committee. That's kind of what I'm going to do tonight. It's going to take maybe 5 minutes tops. I'd also like to just put it out there, thanking each and every one of you for taking your time out of your busy schedules to be here to assist the city and the citizens of Brownsville. It's very much appreciated by us all. So now with that being said, I'm going to talk about governance and how it is that a city has a home rule charter and how those amendments can come about. Next slide, please. So basically, under the Texas Constitution, in regard to Article 11, Section 5, and I don't have all of that section up here. I only have the parts that are relevant to what you guys need to know about. So first of all, 5,000 inhabitants, obviously, City of Brownsville, we have 5,000 inhabitants. And for that purpose, we are able to adopt or amend a charter. In our case, we already have a charter in place, so it won't be an adoption, it'll be an amendment. The second part of Section 5, in which you all need to be aware about, is we have certain limitations in what you can do for the charter amendment. So based off of the Constitution as well as legislation. Now, for those of you who don't know what it means by prescribed by the legislature, it's simply enactment of statute. Laws and other or governance is what that means right there. So we just have to pay attention to certain sections of statutes. Specifically, for our purposes, it will be the Texas Local Government Code. And the last part is probably the one that is most important here right now for us, is that it can only happen every 2 years. And you heard everybody say, oh, we were here about 2 years ago. Well, 2 years ago, the amendment did take place, but it won't be 2 years until May 1st of 2023. But the actual election will be May 6th of 2023. So we're good on that. So no need to worry about that. But I just wanted to give you a heads up that that is also part of governing in regard to charter amendments. Next slide, please. So specifically in regard to legislation governance, Texas Local Government Code, all of Chapter 9 talks about charter amendments and the ways to go about voting for the commission, lots of different information that you all can look at should you wish to, and I can send you links to these websites where you can go out and get the information. But specifically, Section 9.004 talks about charter amendments and what it is that we need to be aware of here today. So in this case, what is happening in order for the charter amendment to take place, or the committee in this fashion, is that City Commission has decided on their own motion, because they're the governing body of a municipality, that they want to go forward with a charter amendment. There's another way to do it as well, which is by petition of citizens, but that's not the reason why we're here today. So I didn't put that as part of this. The second part is in regard to the timeline. And I'm kind of going to skim over that because Mr. Trevino, he's going to talk to that extremely specifically with you all. But as you heard me say, May 6, 2023, that's the date. That's what we're shooting for, but we have so many things to do before then. There are notices, just, you well know, it's gonna be, we'll do it, we'll get there. And finally, the last one is pretty important. An amendment may not contain more than one subject. So for instance, I'd like to give you an example, right? Last time we did the charter amendment, we had term limitations for the mayor and the commissioner. Obviously, they kind of run hand in hand, right? But we had to amend each one of those separately because they're specific subjects as to the mayor and as to the commissioners, right? So that is what this means when an amendment may not contain more than one subject. You're only allowed when you go through the charter, and I think they provided you a copy, but I'm not sure with the charter. But when you go through and do your review and take a look at it, just understand that things cannot be combined in regard to subject matter. Just keep that in mind when you are making your reviews. We have to make sure that any amendment gives a clear idea to the public as to what it is we want to convey. And then obviously, our office will work on proposition language, which is something that we take from the amendment itself. But other than that, I would like to point out, in case you don't know, qualified voter, that in the first bullet there, and that just means a registered voter. So it's not somebody who has the ability to vote, it's somebody who is a registered voter. So does anyone have any questions on those two portions of the Constitution or of the Texas Local Government Code? Yes, sir.
You mentioned the community could petition. Would that affect the timeline at all, or the timeline is still the same?
The way to amend the charter through a citizen petition is another way to go about amending the charter, and that one is not applicable for this situation, so we won't need to worry about that because we'll be doing.
But just for general knowledge, my question is it still limited to every 2 years, even if
Yes.
it's done through
Yes,
that way? Okay.
yes. Because if you go back a slide, the Texas Constitution is what governs the every 2 years. We obviously, in order to change the Texas Constitution, there would have to be a vote by the public.
Yeah, of course.
Or-
And it's one subject per amendment. Are we limited to how many amendments we can propose?
No,
And ultimately, the city commission would accept or deny.
yes,
any
and that'll be
amendments that we
part of
provide.
one of the next presentations
Okay.
that's coming up. I just wanted to give you a super brief overview of how the city gets the authority to have a charter, and then how, when we do have a charter, after we've adopted it, how we do and can go about amending it.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Slide, please. And also just to add what Jennifer was saying, for the petition review, it's about, I believe, 5% of the qualified voters. So those registered to vote in the previous election. So 5% of those would actually have to sign a petition. City Secretary's office would have to verify those signatures. And then at that point, they could present their language. But what we're doing here is we're requiring two off-site public hearings, and Mr. Trevino will go over that in the timeline. Is in addition to these meetings, where the charge from the city commission is to have 2 public hearings. We're going to propose at the event center to where the public can provide their input onto the recommendations. So in effect, having their voice. So I'm just going to go over a quick introduction into drafting charter amendments and other recommendations. Next slide, please. So I quickly wanted to go over, some of you have been down here, so just bear with me. And some who are new to the process, I want to make this clarification at the very beginning. The difference between ordinances and charter provisions, although they're both governing documents for the city, the ordinances, those are your local laws. Those are when you think about people, our state representatives and senators up in Austin, and how they legislate some of the laws that we all have to comply with. Our ordinances are our local laws, and the city commission is the legislative body. Now, when it comes to the charter provisions, that's more of the equivalent of a constitution. So either state or United States Constitution, those are hard and fast. They don't change often. And that's why our legislators our Constitution has limited us to amendments every 2 years, right? So those are just going to be kind of your 4 corners of the operation of government. And so when you're going and looking at amending these charter provisions, and Will has assisted other cities in their charter revision process. I've assisted other cities. Jennifer obviously has done it with the city of Brownsville. And in all cases, there's this constant kind of tug and pull about what should be amended, what should be added to the charter, because then there's this kind of like this gray area of, is it really a place for a charter amendment, or is it something that the city commission should adopt the ordinance for, right? So we're here to help guide you through that process. And if you have any questions, please, we're here to answer those. Next slide, please. So just a few tips for drafting amendments. Less is more, I think, is what can be summarized, because you have to think that these are they're set in stone, and they're going to be only addressed every 2 years. Our recommendations always are that you use plain English, that you use definitions where possible. So to keep it consistent, one of them is consistency. Is let's say you want to identify a key objective, a key provision. Sometimes it's a lot easier to create a definition, capture that definition, and then start using that term as defined throughout your charter. Also, write what you mean. A lot of times, especially lawyers can be guilty of this, and especially there's a joke, lawyers are charged by the word, and so we can get verbose and go on in our writings, but really write what you mean, right? So we'll help guide you through that. We'll try to be as simple and as clear as possible. Consistency, we touched on that. Also, eliminate duplicative language. If we can recommend anything, is that in most cases, it's probably best to cut versus to add, if that makes any sense. Of course, you need to add, anytime you cut, you got to clarify things and make things consistent, so you have to add here and there. But a lot of charters, I believe ours was adopted in 1915, and then wasn't revised until like the 70s, I believe. 75, 74, around there. So the way people wrote in the early 1900s and even in 1975 has changed dramatically. And a lot of things that were important to the city, have changed since then. The city's grown dramatically since even the 70s, even since the 80s or 90s. So what we want to do is look to eliminate duplicative language, and also constantly think, is this applicable to an ordinance or the charter? And then also in all cases, and we'll be good at this, and I know Jen shared this with the board last time, is we have to leave room for statutory requirements. So things we might come up, for an example, we might come up with a charter amendment today that might be precluded by state or preempted by state law later, right? So we're constantly going to kind of be advising to, or as otherwise amended or required by state or federal law. So we'll be adding those to that. Next slide, please. And here are just some of our recommendations as we kind of go forward through this process, just general high-level recommendations. Is the charge, and Mr. Vina will go over this, but my recommendation is kind of think of this, of your proposals into 3 buckets. Obviously, we know we're here because the triggering event was the PUB audit and the realization that the City Commission needed some more tools to help regulate and to monitor the PUB. And so that's under Article 6 of the Charter. So that's your first bucket. Also, any other recommendations that this committee, a Charter Review Committee, might find, especially those who have been here, this is their second go around, and may have recalled other provisions that weren't placed into the previous charter election just because of time. We're on a similar time crunch this time around. We hope to provide the structure and the support to where all recommendations that are brought up can be at least addressed and hopefully incorporated into a proposal to the City Commission. And then finally, also in the resolution is any kind of technical cleanup provisions. And throughout the course of this, our office and City Manager's office will also submit our recommendations as the cleanup language that we would propose. But if you think of it in those 3 buckets, I think it's a good place to start. Also create a list and establish priorities early, because we will run out of time. It's just the honest truth of it. And again, a lot of lawyers, they say they never finish writing, they just run out of time and have to submit it before the deadline. And I assume that's what's going to happen with this commission is there's going to be a lot of great ideas, and we're eventually just going to have to submit something to the city commission for their approval, consideration and approval. But we want to make sure that that recommendation is as complete as possible. Also, another recommendation is that for our meetings, we're going to have pretty much our proposal is to meet once every week. The city commission, so just to kind of put it out there, all boards and commissions as created by the city commission should fall under Texas Open Meetings Act. But since this is an advisory board and all final recommendations rest with the city commission, they have the flexibility to make any kind of tweaks to that. And they've at the last meeting asked that this board be given the flexibility to do virtual meetings. Typically, we would need 4 to be present to initiate the quorum, and then any other members could attend virtually. We still recommend, because of the importance of this board and how much participation is going to be helpful for the final product, we do encourage, when possible, to attend in person, but we can attend virtually. But we will be hopefully meeting weekly. And our recommendation is just to limit it to either 1.5 to an hour and a half to 2 hours per meeting. We think that this is enough to kind of recap from the previous meeting, talk about whatever homework we were assigned to go back for that week, bring it back with hopefully our revisions and our proposals to address the commission's concerns, but then also to receive new recommendations and proposals from this commission, and also from feedback from the public. Our other recommendation is, instead of waiting to the very end to provide a report to the city commission, it's our recommendation that at every city commission meeting, we'll have the chairperson and or the vice chair actually submit a work session item or presentation to the city commission at their meeting as to the update, any kind of steps that we've taken forward, any kind of proposals, and vet those early on with the city commission, so that as to not have to present everything all at once at the very end, hopefully to provide some kind of efficiencies. And so those meetings are December 6th and 13th, and then January 3rd and 17th. And then we'll see that at the end of January, beginning of February, we start to make our final presentations to the city commission. So what your final review process would probably look like is that last 2 weeks of January, final drafts being approved by this committee. The very last week of meetings, the first January 30th to the February 3rd, to close out any kind of outstanding issues or concerns. And then February 7th would be that official report to the city commission. I just really want to kind of give you that, like those 4 corners. You don't have to adopt this. This is just kind of a recommendation of how we might be efficient with our time and just kind of create expectations for the group as we go forward. Next slide, please. And with that, I'll bring up Mr. Trevino. Mr. Trevino drafted the resolution for the city commission when it approved the creation of this committee. And so he'll go over just some of the background, some of the charging clauses, and also proposed timeline.
My apologies. My foot fell asleep back there. Again, thank you all. I think you've heard that over and over again. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Not just for serving on the committee, but for possibly serving every week on the committee. And so the resolution adopted by the City Commission is your playbook. It does require that we have 2 meetings out with the public, right? One thing that I told my colleagues is that the city chambers is the central location and where we have our city commission meetings. But if you're a member of the public, it's kind of hard to park, right? And so one of the things that I had said was the event center has glorious parking. It's has a lot of parking, right? And so there's no citizens here, but with what you've been charged with, I would hope that we'd have some citizen participation. You never know though, right? And so the resolution does require those two. As Mr. Flores indicated, final recommendations are expected by February the 7th. And at that same commission meeting, the commission will hold their own public hearing as well here. The reason for that timeline is because any election, whether it's general or special, has to be approved by February 17th, I believe is that Friday. So if we're going to call an election, that would be the hard deadline for the May election. Next slide. And so when the commission considered whether or not to call a charter committee together to consider any changes to Article 6, the Utilities Board, and of course, other recommendations that we might have, as well as you all, we produced this tentative calendar to show them that you don't necessarily have to meet every week, but it can be done where you could meet as a body. This was the availability based on the calendar, not including the weeks for the holidays, right? So we took a couple of weeks off for Christmas and New Year's. So we're giving you all a little bit of a vacation. But you're welcome. But the whole point was so that we can have the hard deadline of meeting it for February 7th, and then the city commission can order the election the following week. If they order it that same day, then that's great. May 6th would be the election. It's also an election where we're having the mayor at large A, districts 1 and 2 as well. So we have a special and a general election. One of the considerations was if we don't have it in May of 2023, when could we have it? Right? The election code requires that we have it during a uniform election date. So that would be May or November. With the current having the elections every 4 years, we have an election this year for offices. We won't have another city commission election until 2025. And in the interim, from now until then, we'll have in November, possibly constitutional amendment elections, the presidential election in 2024. And so the expense of having an election outside of this May increases, right? And so that's why there was a hard deadline set, what you see before you. Next slide.
You know how much estimated cost to have it
Versus now versus later, I'm not,
on a different date?
yeah, I'm not particularly sure. If we don't have it on a uniform election date, the election code will require that we get permission from the governor, or we'd have to get a court order. My understanding is about 250,000. And I'm assuming that's just for the city elections. So that's when it's already scheduled with other political subdivisions. If we go outside, I would anticipate it possibly doubling, just from my experience of having elections in other cities.
Yeah, the intent obviously is to align to the plan. I'm just questioning to understand the boundary conditions, right?
Sure. And then keep in mind too, with voters, if you have it somewhere outside of a city election, you're going to have competition with other city commission, county commission, state offices, constitutional amendments. Usually there's a lot of those. So the ballot gets longer and longer and longer. So not only do you have the possibility of confusing the voters, you have the possibility of a higher expense.
So that does wrap up our workshop item. Does anybody have any questions before we proceed to actual action items?
Yeah, so once an amendment is recommended by us, right, I assume we're going to be voting,
Yes.
and then you'll need majority for it to be presented to the commission,
Yes, that's correct.
and then the commission would decide either to continue the process or to deny it.
To approve it, deny it, or even amend it.
Okay.
Correct. Something that our office is already committed to and already engaged is we're fully confident with the work product that we'll produce, but this is an elections item. And so we do have outside counsel who specializes in election law to make sure that the one subject per amendment is complied with. But that's just kind of like our insurance to make sure that everything's good to go. So we will do that as part of the final review process. Any other questions? That was a good question. And if any of these questions come up throughout, please just, give us a call, a text, or.
I guess the last question is, each amendment, assuming it makes it to the ballot, each amendment is voted on independently by the
Yes, that's
community? Okay.
Yes. And I believe, let me see your, I know the one I shared with via email had it, and yeah, this one does too. You can actually see on the page 53 of 54, you can see every election date. So dating 1915, you have 1975, there were, Proposition 1, 4, 5 through 7 were approved. I think in 93, you had all of them, 1 through 12. 2000, you had 1 through 5. And I think the most you've had have been 12 propositions. But that's just kind of give you a guesstimate.
And to be clear, if I'm understanding the acronyms correctly, 1915 was initiated by the voters, the citizens, and then in 2010, that was also initiated by the voters.
And at this point, there's no questions, and I'm sure there might be questions throughout the next couple action items. We'll go to consideration action approving future CRC meeting dates, and I'll have Mr. Reno come back and give a more detailed presentation on the actual dates and timelines.
Next slide, please. One more. There we go. So my understanding is, in the last time this committee met, I know there's some new members. I believe some of the commission meetings were between the lunch hour, right? And so given that history, we found that the chambers is available either between 12 to 2 or 5 to 9 on these particular days, November 7th all the way to February 3rd. So as you consider your meetings, these are the days that the chambers is available. And we'll come back to this shortly. Next slide. Now the Brownsville Event Center, and here's an example. This is a vendor's workshop that was held there. Again, there's adequate parking, adequate seating. There's room at the front for a dais, a makeshift dais, and then of course a presentation board that we would have there as well. And so it's a good setup. The thing with the event center is it is shared with other outside entities, other people that rent it. And so the availability is a little bit more, it's less. And so availability from 12 to 2 or 5 to 8 are available only on these particular dates. First day, of course, November 7th, and it goes on. And so I realize you might not have this in front of you, but as you all prepare your schedule of meetings, we can start, if you want to start off with the chamber's availability, you can go off of that one, and then you can let us know if you want to proceed to the event center availability.
And by using the event center, is there a fee to the city for holding these meetings?
My understanding, if I'm not mistaken, is no.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's I believe it's our facility. There will be a fee, unfortunately, for the media services component of that, but that's something that we have already taken into consideration.
For the event center, are there any recommendations that you're making? I know the recommendation general was 2, right, the public hearings to have there, but were there dates associated with that? That you're
No,
recommending? or
not
we're just-
particularly. I would really, we are making ourselves available to y'all's convenience.
Okay.
And the availability is such to where if you want it every Thursday, you can have it every Thursday, to an extent. There's some chamber conflicts with other boards and commissions.
Just wanted to say, I know this is a lot to decide on today. It is presented as an action item in case you wanted to set maybe even like the first couple or few meetings following this one, so that we can kind of schedule and reserve the spaces. But specifically, I think with these public hearing meetings, we can, you can look at these dates. We can actually set this as a specific item for action at the next meeting to set these public meeting dates at the event center. So you can take time and look at your work and home calendars. I know those get really busy around the holidays. But if anything for today, I would recommend, can you go back two more slides? So for the weeks of the next 2 weeks, maybe, so November 7th through the 11th, November 14th through 18th, if we could get maybe some dates today for meetings those weeks, and then we can, everybody can kind of take these, we can provide these slides to you, and we can set the rest after that.
Oh, yeah, because it was easy for us just to, wherever we're at, just move into another little office and do that. But if the potential is to have the citizens participate. So it would be hard for the citizens to be here between those hours, the noon to 2, when it would be, we don't want to seem like we are excluding them.
Yeah, no, I
So,
agree.
If we decide that we do it 12 to 2, well, they're going to be, there'll be the few that, oh, why do they have it during lunch hour when they know we can't go?
No,
You
that's
know,
true.
We have to give them the opportunity to be here in order for them to not to come to us and say, well, you know what, you don't give us the opportunity to be there and voice our opinions. So-
What time do y'all think,
I would think within reason, it would have to be in the afternoon, that 5 to 8 period.
what time
Well,
works for you?
Well, and we're recommending an hour and a half to 2 hours.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, if you go over a little bit, that's fine, but that's kind of like the pocket
That way
one.
they don't have.
5 to 7, 5 to
Yeah.
6, 6:30.
Yeah, 5 to 7, in the sense that, oh, well, you know what, they're having these meetings, so we can't be there.
I love that idea. I
Yeah.
think you're completely right. It was also COVID last.
Yeah, it
time,
was
so
COVID, yeah,
like,
so we were all.
we all just dealt with it, but it really became a comfortable place, but I think you're completely right.
Yeah.
And do you think maybe 6 o'clock would be a sufficient time to allow people to get here or
Yeah.
drop off?
I would think 6 to 8, depending on our council.
No, that's too late for me.
Is that Daisy?
Yes.
Hey, Daisy.
So starting at 5 or 5:30 latest.
5:30 latest.
So 5:30.
So we could do
7:30.
5:30 and make it an hour and a half.
That way that gives them enough time that if they're getting off of work at 5, they
Yeah.
have, you know.
And that would take
opportunity.
it 5:30 to about 7.
Yeah.
I can do that. I can do
Yeah.
that every Thursday. I mean, I think
Yeah.
Thursdays are good,
Yeah,
but
Thursdays are good for me too.
You have another comment?
Yeah, I guess in the past, what kind of citizen participation did y'all have?
We didn't because we were on Zoom.
Because I would assume that the beginning, there's going to be some general idea.
Yeah.
Push we're doing, then you're probably going to have some more people wanting to have.
I mean, participation on Zoom is still an option. Like the public can participate on Zoom or WebEx, right?
That's
It's not
correct.
like they were necessarily excluded because it was virtual.
And just so that you have some historical background, as far as I can recall, I think there were only one meeting where the public joined in, and it actually truly wasn't the public. It was a commissioner who joined in.
Yeah.
So it wasn't more so, I don't know if it was because of during the lunchtime, like Mr. Cardenas said, or if it was just the fact that it was through Zoom and whatnot. But the meetings, and another thing for you to consider, the meetings did last a little bit longer than an hour, if you can
Yeah.
recall. Sometimes they went, most of the time, it was an hour and 15 minutes, most of the time. So if we're looking for the hour and a half to 2 hours, or like Ms. Zamora said, 5:30 to 7 o'clock, that would give a buffer zone should it go over the 7 o'clock, because she's just stated it's 8 o'clock is too late. So just historical perspective from the last time around.
If you can go to one slide forward, please. One more. The other way. Sorry.
Mr. Merrill, do you have any, I know that you're still waiting, but do you
There
have
you go,
any
right there.
suggestions? I mean,
Quite candidly, I'm very pleased to be able to serve, and my schedule will be open to almost every day except one other responsibility to the city in the form of another commission that meets once a month, usually in the third Thursday. But that may be able to be rearranged, but that's the only conflict. I promise I will clear my calendar for anything else. Thank you for
well, I
asking.
mean, in order to just avoid it altogether, why don't we do Wednesday? I mean, because then, any day after work would work for me.
And I would actually, for staff wise, Wednesday's probably the least busy for either our communications team or any other meetings that are kind of out there that we have to staff.
Okay.
We've committed to providing as many of our attorneys as possible, but sometimes we do get those other board meetings. We'll have at least two attorneys at each meeting for sure. But Wednesdays, so here I think for the next two, I had it up here earlier, the 9th and the 16th, which are Wednesdays. Those are available here at Chambers.
Okay.
And then we can take up the other meetings at the next date.
Okay, so the next two Wednesdays, right? Wednesday is good for you? If I'm understanding
The
what
9th, right, the 9th and the 16th.
Well,
Yeah, the 16, I'm traveling, but,
Would you be able to attend virtually, do you think, or?
I hope so. Yeah, I'll try my best.
what,
But
I
if
mean,
majority's here, obviously, I'm okay with that.
Because we could also, I mean, there's Friday, the 18th, but that's a Friday.
like, we don't have to do it every Wednesday either. We can do like this one time Wednesday and then the next time Friday. I mean,
Right.
Yeah, I think this,
that's a good idea. Let's just do one.
Okay,
Yeah, that's a good idea.
For next Wednesday, and then hopefully we have everyone.
5:30?
Yeah, or 5:30, 5.
I don't know. I'm a fan of lunch, but
Miss Daisy?
Well, I like the lunch hour too. It's just easier since I have little kids. But I'm willing to do as long, in the evenings, as long as they're over by 7. Because, like if it was once a month, I would say the time really doesn't matter. I can accommodate. But if we're talking about weekly, then that's a lot.
And I know that one of the concerns for our office was that 2 of our attorneys from our staff would like to be at attendance for most of these meetings. During the lunch hour, obviously, we will be here during the day, right? But in the afternoons, and I'm not trying to say I need to be here, but I have trials in the afternoons. So more than likely, if you do them during the lunch hour, I won't be able to attend. But that's fine. Victor and Will both be here, and they can update me. I got no issues with that.
that's fine with that.
well, and like we said, we're completely flexible. We'll have at least 2 attorneys per meeting. And if we need to switch a lunch for evening or however it
Yeah.
might be.
I guess we could just start with the first.
We want to stay uniform. That way it's not confusing to the public, because we
Right.
want to make sure that the public has the access to get to it. That way they don't say, oh, well, now they're changing the meeting. How do we know when it's going to be? Either by going online or
Let-
calling.
Let me suggest this. I'm thinking that if we can have at least one meeting a month where the public, and during a time frame in which the public can participate, how would you all feel about that? I mean, meaning that not every meeting would be accommodated.
Well, yes, and so we have two, we're required to have two specific meetings, and those will be those meetings that we were gonna kind of at a later date schedule for the event center. Those are gonna be like your, hey, we're advertising everybody in the public,
Oh,
come participate. This is your chance. Come give the CRC what you want to see on there, right? Your recommendations. So those are separate and aside.
Right.
These are kind of your more routine meetings where you do a lot of your work and
come up with
collaboration.
something to say. We need to be
Right,
able to
right,
debate
right.
it. We need to be able to talk about
For
the
that.
issues.
Yeah, so let's vote next week and then
Yeah, let's do next
maybe
week.
in the interim, we can.
How about 5 next week?
Wednesday?
Yeah, Wednesday at 5.
I have a
Okay.
tentative conflict. I don't think I do, but I could try. I know I'll be available Thursday, but I know we might have another issue there, but
You're good
Yeah.
on Thursday, right? This next Thursday?
I will be good on Thursday. yes.
Okay.
Thursday is also available.
Thursdays are easier for me too, in general.
Thursdays are better for Daisy. Okay.
So the 10th is available, 5, same time, 5 to
Yeah.
6:30 or 7.
I'll motion for next Thursday meeting at 5 o'clock.
A second.
Any opposed?
No.
Gentlemen, Mr. Mota, thank you. Next item, please.
Next item is consideration and action approving future agenda items.
Again, you may not have items yet, but we did just want to provide the opportunity. Again, thinking about those 3 buckets, Article 6 of the charter, any other provisions that you might have as a CRC. At this time, our legal team and city manager's office, we have some meetings set coming up, which we'll discuss any kind of technical or cleanup provisions. We don't have any to provide at this time. But this item is placed here in case you guys came ready to make some recommendations. We could at least put those for consideration at the next meeting on next Thursday.
I think the schedule one is a good action for us to take, right?
So the overall schedule of meetings.
Yes.
Like a full meeting, a full schedule, like from now until
Calendar.
May or whatever?
Well, that's what it's on there now, but we can, if we decide just to do it, another meeting or whatever, we
Yeah.
can debate it or at the time or discuss it. But ideally, we need to have something so we can take an action to
Yeah.
set the meeting date.
Yeah, if we can get as complete of a set of dates as possible, because we have our 72-hour posting requirement, and now we can get all the information out to the public. And work with CMP as well.
We can do some calendar-y thing.
Yeah.
Where we put, when we're available or whatever.
Yeah, we'll send out an email and
Yep.
figure out.
Can we do that?
I can,
we talk to, via
so,
email?
so,
or is
so
that-
so what I would recommend is that we'll send you the PowerPoint of those dates and when this building is available and the event center is available, and you can just highlight which of those dates you're available. Send them to myself, our legal
and then
team,
you can collect them.
and we'll collect them. And at the next meeting, we'll compile all those into a report and we'll say, hey, these are where everybody kind of lines up.
I think it might be better to say which one we're not available. We're going to be doing.
Okay.
Limit our choice.
Right. Yeah.
So that's a good point. Just mark those dates on the PowerPoint slides that you are not available. That's
I
good.
guess as well as your all's office or your.
Yeah, the best times for you all too, we'd like to know.
Yeah. Okay. As a committee, did anybody come to this meeting today kind of prepared to identify certain parts of Article 6 that,
I do.
okay?
I mean, just to identify Article 6, I can find it, but it's the one where they can only remove one board member I think that one needs to be discussed. I mean, at least put on the agenda for next time.
Yeah.
I think it's a good start.
Looking at page 46.
What was that? What was that?
Yeah, 46E, 40, page 46. Well, actually, it's yeah, section 1E,
Yes.
page 46.
Oh, the removal provision with, within 12 months. Okay. Got that.
Yeah.
We'll bring that up.
Do we have to motion for that?
Well, are there any other items that you'd like to put on that?
Maybe not a provision of the charter, but last time what we did was we had, we authorized the chair to ask the city commission, each individually, what they think, how they could benefit from an amendment to the, and I thought that worked out pretty good.
Yeah.
I would also ask, maybe, PUB as well, somebody from PUB. I don't know who to identify exactly, but, I would like their input. Maybe a presentation, maybe down the road, if we can have something done from PUB. So I guess I'd like to have, I guess maybe the chair should have the authority to reach out to the commissioners to see what, at least just first step, just the commissioners to see what their ideas are.
Exactly.
So are there any issues that have been brought to y'all's attention that need to be addressed? Because I don't feel like we need to look at everything and change something just to change it.
Right.
And so if there's something, a specific item or that they want us to review and address aside from what's been pointed out here for the removal of a board member.
Right. So I think one of the ones is reporting requirements. I believe that's on D. So 4D, miscellaneous 4D, where they had maybe it's not 1D. There's a reporting requirement. I believe it's once a year, but maybe expanding on the reporting requirements. And then also I think there is some discussion about 4F. Yes. Yes, it was 4F. The last sentence of 4F.
What page?
This is page 50 of 54. Also, something for the board to consider, it came up let's say, from a policy perspective is PUB is treated as I think the term is a private corporation, entirely private corporation on its own and has authority to do anything that a private corporation would be able to do. And so I think what a lot of the discussion will be is how involved does the city want to be in managing PUB?
I guess by statute,
No,
wouldn't they be restricted in certain things? I thought the commissioners were the only ones that could, make the rates and do certain things. I didn't think that. they could give full-
So in different cities, it's all by charter. If a utility is owned by a city, it's governed by charter. You have, I believe, the city of Denton. The city commission, they call them city council. The city council actually sits as the utility board itself, and so they have all the power and authority to manage their utility company. I think the city of Lubbock's company I believe they just have the ability to appoint the GM. And then everything else is governed by the board itself. There are about a handful of other utility companies. So I think what we might be able to do is just bring a survey of what other cities do.
There's 72 municipally owned utilities in Texas.
Yeah, the complexity of what's like the city of Brownsville, like in our same group. I mean, you have like I think San Antonio, a lot much bigger, but I would say that the ones you would look at our size, they're about a handful, maybe 5 to 10, like that would be a good apples to apples comparison.
Yep, that would be good.
No, sure, we can bring you the information and then you guys can
Discuss,
take it.
yeah.
Yeah, just which cities and ordinances basically.
Just comparable size and user usage. We'll slate that as a workshop, and then maybe take items from there as future agenda items. But so what I have right here right now is for sure Article 6, 1E, which is the removal of board members, and then scheduling a more certain table of meeting dates. And then also, I believe there's a recommendation to slate a workshop where PUB would be able to provide input, a representative. And what would be the presentation you would like to see from PUB?
It specifically to how they feel about the current charter, the relationship they have. Grounds? As towards the day-to-day operations, I don't think we need to know that. But if there is a way to streamline the communication between them, I'd like to hear from them. I'd like to hear from somebody who's been there for years, saying, well, I'd like this to be a little different in this way or another, and just give them an opportunity to present. But issues only pertaining to the relationship that they have with the city. And maybe even specifically just the charter provisions.
Yeah, of course, just the charter. I mean,
Right,
that's our
right.
focus.
And so what the charter addresses in Article 6 is really the management. The management relationship between the city and PUB. That's what it touches on. We have various ordinances that actually talk about setting the rates and the operations. If you want to think about it, management and operations. Management from a very high level perspective. The selection of GM, the authority to bind PUB to certain actions, financial, otherwise, reviewing of audit papers, financials, reporting of rates, of changes, who initiates those recommended changes, PUB or the city?
So
Right?
it sounds like maybe we should be listening to board members, either previous or current from PUB, since they're the ones who are voting, right, making the decisions, dealing with management.
Yeah, that's a good idea, Nathan.
So
I guess
right,
at the workshop, it could be both. I mean,
right.
management and board.
So we have a joint subcommittee that's
Oh,
been
yeah.
that's been tasked. They have a different objective. They've been tasked with planning or strategizing a way to deal with the remaining funds from the Tenasca project itself. And so you have 2 board members plus the mayor, 2 PUB board members plus the mayor, and then 2 other city commission members as well. The PUB board members just got appointed yesterday, I believe, to the subcommittee, but I could reach out to them.
Who are they?
One is Patricio Sampaio, and then the other one I'm trying to see the email in my head, but I can't recall.
Yes, I think that would be a great idea. Sampaio is very familiar with the charter review process.
Okay,
I
so,
think we need to hear from Sampaio.
okay. As to just the management relationship between PUB and the city as written in the charter currently.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, that's fine. Is the transfer in the charter or is that a separate item?
Separate.
The tran-
I'm pretty sure of it.
The transfer of funds?
Yeah.
And so I assume the
So,
city commission.
so the operations, the actual setting of fees, and we just passed a moratorium to limit the interest for late fees and disconnections, and those are all within the ordinances, but those go to the operations.
Yeah, I mean the fund transfers
transfer.
from PUB to the city,
That's not in the charter.
Okay.
The 10%,
or whatever it is.
whatever
yeah.
it is, the 10% that goes from
Yeah.
PUB to the city.
Yeah, it's I'm trying to remember now. It's not my understanding that there is I don't think the transfer is in the charter. But we can confirm that.
It says application of revenues, section 3. I haven't read through it, but at least the title.
But it's the 10%, I don't recall it being there, but
C1, to the general fund of the city, the sum of 400,000 to the extent available or an amount equal to 50% of the surplus funds.
Yeah, that's, I don't know if that's been happening, but I've heard it was 10%.
it's 10%, but
It's
I,
10%.
yeah.
I would put that one,
What was
on
that
the
that
agenda
you were
next week,
referring to? What's the
at
citation?
least for us to discuss it.
I second that.
Yeah.
I second that.
Just give me a second, I'm sorry.
And so I assume if we're gonna hear from the PUB board members, that we'd also like to hear from the city commission as to what their, because, I mean, you're gonna have two different opinions. One of them is probably gonna want less oversight from the city commission, and the city commission is gonna want more oversight. So I think if we're gonna hear from both, or from one, it would
Yeah.
be in everyone's best interest to hear from both.
I'm sorry. If you can bring your mics closer to you, just so the people streaming can hear you, that's the only way they can hear you. is by the
Okay.
mics.
If we're gonna hear from the PUB board members, I think we have to hear from the city commission as well. Because I assume they're gonna have somewhat different opinions as to who's
Sure.
responsible for what oversight.
Sure, and you are, I mean, for the next 4 city commission meetings, you'll be presenting a report, or our esteemed chairman will be presenting a, a report to the city commission on any kind of input that you have. So you're going to get that input from the whole commission and mayor at least 4 times before it goes final to the city commission.
The way that we did that last time was, we just had the chair contact each commissioner and give them a, open-ended, what do you think? And they would respond back with their recommendations.
Yeah.
Um,
We actually, I mean, the reason why we recommend that, it just lends itself more to transparency and more to open dialogue.
yeah,
Because then you're having to go one by one.
Yeah.
And you've seen how a lot of times you can see one commissioner acknowledge a point from another commissioner that they had not thought about
right.
because of the collaborative process and sharing of ideas at the meeting. So that's why we recommend the report to the
The
commission.
weekly report.
Weekly reports.
Yeah, and I think that covers that. Their perspective, I think we'll be hearing that weekly. I guess.
So
Yeah, so did you get the last item that we would like, which was section 3, application of revenues, letter C?
Yeah, you motioned to put that on the agenda and I seconded it, so.
let me just get these all straight.
Obviously, the PUB is kind of the catalyst, so I think we need to give that priority. Get that out in the open and air it out.
Yeah, and then once,
So I have a workshop item with Board Member Sampaio to provide a presentation on any thoughts or recommendations as to the relationship between PUB, the management relationship between PUB and the city as it applies to the city charter. We also have a action item for scheduled meetings. Then we have an action item to consider two provisions, at least so far, which are Article 6, 1E, which is the removal of board members, and Article 6, Section 3, subsection C, which applies to surplus funds.
Then once we have Mr. Merrill on board and Mr. Cascos here, there may be some more added once they're here.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
on our next meeting,
The
hopefully.
next, yeah.
I would think we would revisit this next meeting also.
Yes.
To
So,
add whatever else we need, and then if there's any suggestions of any other charters that we need to touch on that say, you know what, this would be good for our city.
right. So just as we have like our different kind of subtitles on our agenda, I know Jennifer in the last go around would always have a constant update from legal department as to recommendations previously provided in previous meetings. And so that's our chance to follow up and present. If you guys gave us homework to come back with specific language to tweak, that would be where we would present it. Any kind of action would be taken at that point, or other recommendations from the board as well. So does anybody have any others? I think I have workshop meetings 1E, and then section 3, subsection C on surplus revenues. Any others? Or, like you said, this is just a starting point, but
Yeah, I believe this would be a good starting point, and then once we have the full committee, then we can add or mainly add items to say, okay, these we need to really consider
right.
and moving forward.
Okay. I just need a motion to,
I guess the last thing is, do we need to do anything about the potential appointment of David Merrill?
no, we'll have that as his, he would have to swear. He's already been appointed.
Okay,
We just have to do an oath of office for him, and he would be
Understood.
locked in.
I have a motion to adjourn.
Well, no, I would just need a motion to approve those items.
Oh,
to replace the text.
Motion to
approve.
A second.
All those in favor?
aye.
Any opposed? Okay, one last item. This is consideration action in approving CRC rules and procedures. Don't want to get too complicated, but as we kind of set the foundation for this board going forward, I think in speaking with Jennifer, the board in the past did not want to get too complicated with the rules. But at a minimum, I would recommend adopting Robert's Rules of Order. I have a couple recommendations here if you just entertain me for a second. So adopting Robert's Rules of Order, including a majority of those present to approve any kind of CRC action. Agenda preparation that the city manager, city attorney, city manager are two members of the CRC may, and in the course of our breaks in between, could call myself, the city attorney, to request that a certain agenda item be placed on the agenda for consideration if something comes up. And I'll explain, I'll take a step back and say, these are the procedures under Brownsville City Ordinance 2-26. This is what the City Commission has adopted for their meetings. So we would just be replicating some of the provisions here that I've stated that have been useful for City Commission meetings, if you would like to adopt them as well. They allow the city attorney, city manager, and two members of the commission, or in this case, the CRC, to place items on the agenda. Matters that have been voted for by the CRC and have failed shall not be placed on the agenda for reconsideration unless a member from the CRC on the prevailing side makes a written request to the city attorney to do that. You could see in that case where contentious item, I'm not a family lawyer, but I've been asked to do enough divorce decree petitions, what SAPCers they call them. Yeah, that I don't want to do them anymore. But I tell them, you know, you get that prenup, or even a corporate prenup, which is a management agreement. You get that prenup ahead of time, because when things get bad, they get bad. And so for that reason, it may not ever happen, but if for whatever reason something fails, it would be good to kind of have this provision in there just to fall back on in case we just have some ground rules to go by. And also, if there's ever a tie vote, somebody abstains or is not present, that would be, if there's a tie vote, it would automatically shoot over to the next meeting when everybody would be here, because technically there should never be a tie vote because there's 7.
Motion to adopt.
But I have, what?
Oh, one more?
You have more?
One
Yeah.
more.
He's got a little more.
So just for public comment, and I know there was a comment made earlier, and that there wasn't a lot of public participation last time. I do know it was a lot of people took interest in it because of the term limits. But in this case, we're coming on the heels of the public being very interested in what happens in the relationship between the city of Brownsville and PUB. We've received a lot of engagement from the community on this topic. And so I would recommend we adopt the city's public comment policy, which I've stated here. Pretty much it limits public speaking to 5 speakers per meeting on the public comment portion of it at 3 minutes each. We've received a lot more than 5 people in the past recent city commission meetings, but all that would require would be that this board make a motion to extend that time. But it gives those parameters that in case there's 100 people that show up in opposition, that we would have some control measures already set in place that we could point to and say, well, this is what we had adopted earlier.
So limit 5 people, and what was the time limit?
I'm sorry, Ms. Zamora, could you say that one more time?
Yes, there was a time limit, so the limit was on 5 people, right? But
5
what was
people and 3 minutes per speaker.
I see. I make a motion to adopt.
5 people.
Well, it would just be a recommendation to adopt the city commission's public comment policy.
Yeah.
Should be it.
Yeah, I think she motioned.
Is there a
I'll
second?
Second that motion.
Yeah, I told him about motion. Yeah. So there's a motion. Was there a second? I didn't
Yes.
get that.
Yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? With that, gentlemen and Ms. Zamora, that concludes any action items. And we will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I second.
All right, this meeting stands adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It is 6:20, meeting has ended.